Hey guys, it's Danielle with Bo Peeps Bonnets. In today's video, I want to teach you how to read a yarn label. I know it can be kind of intimidating to go into a yarn store and to see all these symbols and numbers and words on a label, and maybe you don't know what some of them mean. So today I'm going to go from the start of a label to the end of a label and talk you through each and every word and symbol that you'll see so that you can pick out the right yarn and the right needles and be ready to go. All right. So let's start out by using this Wool Ease Thick and Quick by Lion Brand. It's one of my favorite yarns. Let me zoom in on the label and I'll talk you through it. Okay, so let's start at the beginning of our skein. So first up, it's going to tell us how much the skein weighs. We see that this skein weighs 6 ounces, 170 grams. Next up, we'll see that the skein is 160 yards long, also known as 97 meters. And that's really important because say I'm knitting a scarf and the pattern tells me that I'm going to need 300 yards of super bulky yarn. I would want to pick up 3 of these skeins because I know that just one is 106 yards. So I want to make sure to get 300, I would need 3. All right, next up is the fiber content that this yarn is comprised of. So this yarn is a blend of 80% acrylic, 20% wool fiber. Something to think about when you're picking out yarn for a project is who are you knitting for? What's their current circumstance? And what time of year is it that you're knitting for also? So for instance, say I was knitting for myself and it was winter time. This would be a great yarn to choose because wool will always keep you warmer than an acrylic fiber. But say I was knitting for a baby, or say I was knitting for someone who recently has hair loss from something like chemotherapy. I definitely would want to avoid wool and instead go with a 100% acrylic fiber that is a higher end yarn with a nice soft satin feel. Another thing to think about is, are you knitting something for spring or summer? Cotton might be a great option. So that's what that section means. All right, let's move on. Okay, so this number here, number 6, refers to the yarn's weight. So here in the United States, we have a scale from 0 to 6. 0 being the smallest yarn available and 6 being the largest yarn available to us. Sometimes you'll see number 6 listed in a pattern, sometimes you'll see super bulky yarn. Those are the same thing. So that tells you the weight class of the yarn. Next up, we have the recommended knitting needle or crochet hook size that this company feels is best when using this yarn. So here they're telling us they feel that a US 13 or 9 millimeter knitting needle would be best, or an N13 9 millimeter crochet hook would be best for using this super bulky yarn. Now this is a recommendation from the yarn company, but definitely you want to use whatever needle size the designer tells you to use in a pattern. It also here is going to give you a gauge swatch. And what that means is this. Let's take the knitting one for an example. If I knit 9 stitches for 12 rows with US 13 knitting needles, I should end up with a square that equals 4 inches by 4 inches. That would be a perfect gauge. Now mine might be off by a little bit. My tension might be looser, giving me a bigger swatch. My tension might be tighter, giving me a smaller swatch. But they're saying that in a perfect world, you know, if you knit 9 stitches for 12 rows on US 13 knitting needles, you're going to end up with 4 inches by 4 inches. Once again, this is only a recommendation by Lion Brand, but always follow what the designer says to do. All right, next up is all these funny symbols. And when I first got into knitting, maybe, oh my gosh, 20 years ago, I didn't know what any of these symbols meant. So if you don't know what they mean, don't worry, we're in this together. So let's just take one at a time. The first one, you can kind of see it's like wavy right there. That's your washing machine symbol. So this yarn is safe to be, this actually tells us right here, machine washable and dryable. Now a lot of yarns aren't going to tell you that right off the bat. They're only going to give you these symbols. So it's really nice of Lion Brand to tell us that right here. So this little icon means machine washable, and it tells us the highest temperature that we can use, 104 degrees Fahrenheit, 40 degrees Celsius. So we could use warm water with this yarn. This next symbol is a triangle. That stands for bleach, and it has an X through it, meaning, hey, you can't bleach this yarn. But I don't know who would bleach their yarn. Hey, I mean, I'm not going to fault you if you did. We've all done weird things, right? Okay, next up we have our dryer symbol. This means that you can dry it. Sometimes you'll see this and it'll have a little dot in the center. It will have 2 dots, 3 dots. That tells you low, medium, high setting on your dryer. Next up we have the iron. That has an X through it, so that means, hey, you can't iron this yarn, it might ruin it. And last up, this A with a circle around it means that it can be professionally dry cleaned, and it tells the dry cleaner which chemicals they can use on the yarn safely. So if you're planning to make something, and if you're planning to wash it only by taking it to the dry cleaner, it's a good idea to keep this label to show them that letter A so that they know what chemicals they can use. All right, so that's that part. And it's always really nice because Lion Brand puts it in French and Spanish. Next up is a lot of important numbers that come near the barcode area. You're going to see here the article number 640. That's not really important to us. You're going to see the color number. For Lion Brand, this is color number 143. The color's name is Claret. And there we have it again in French and Spanish. But the number that is the most important number here is your lot number. My lot number on this skein is 78232A. See if I can read that while looking into my tripod here. So when they dye yarn, they dye it in batches, or we could also say that they dye it in lots. And every batch may be slightly different as far as the amount of dye that's used, the distribution of color in that yarn batch. So you want to make sure that, say you're buying 5 skeins of yarn, that they all have the same lot number. This ensures that they are indeed the exact same color. So say for instance I needed 5 of these, but I bought 3 with this dye lot and 2 with another dye lot. There is a chance that those dye lots are not going to match perfectly, and especially when you get it out in natural light and the sunshine, you usually can tell. So, you know, it's really disheartening, say you're knitting a sweater and maybe the body of the sweater was knit with one dye lot and the arms were knit with a different dye lot, and you take a picture of it out in the sunshine and you're like, why are the sleeves like slightly more pink than red? That's why your dye lots didn't match. Well, that takes us to the end of that label. We did it. We read the label together, and now we're pros, right? Well, let's pick up another yarn. Let's try an all acrylic yarn. Let's try this Red Heart Soft. I have to tell you, I love this yarn so much for knitting chemo hats. It's really soft and luxurious, and it has a nice sheen to it. I love Red Heart, but I would not recommend using their Super Saver yarn for a chemo hat. Don't do that. That is itchy. But the Red Heart Soft yarn for a chemo hat, really great. I love it. Okay, let's take a look at this label together. Okay, so I've got my yarn label turned over, and I'm really glad I picked this one because I see something significantly different with this yarn that we should discuss. So let's start at the top again and work our way down. So this is formatted a little bit differently than the one from Lion Brand, but it's all the same information. It just is going to be located in a different place. So the yarn's name is Navy. Now, looky here, my friends. No dye lot. Yes, this does happen sometimes. Some yarns don't have a dye lot. The dyeing process is a more consistent process where you don't end up with those variations. So if you see that, I can pick one of these up today, and next week I can go back to Michael's, pick up another one. 2 months later, I can pick up another one, and I'm not gonna have to worry about the dye lot because no dye lot, they're all exactly the same. Okay, here we have a number 4 yarn. Now it says medium. I think that's a little bit unusual for it to say medium. It's normally gonna say worsted because number 4 is a worsted weight yarn. Once again, that's telling you the thickness of this strand. And there is our recommended hook size and our recommended needle size. Here they're recommending that we use US 8 needles. And then we have our washing instructions. We see that we can wash it. It tells us the temperature. Here is what I was telling you about before. We can dry it, and they wanted us to dry it on low. That 1 dot means low cycle. We can't iron it. We can't bleach it. And P is once again another thing. It means you can have it professionally cleaned, dry cleaned, and that's the kind of chemicals that they can use on it. Oh, once again, Red Heart tells us right here, machine wash and dry. That's really great. And it lists what kind of fiber it is right here, 100% acrylic fiber. So I have a free pattern on my charity website. I'll flash that up on the screen for a hat called the Button Beauty hat, and it's a chemo donation hat. And this is the yarn that I use for that hat, and I've had it tested on a lot of people that have been going through cancer, and they tell me this is a nice soft yarn. So let's do one more. Why not? Okay guys, here we have another one of my favorite yarns. It's Lion's Pride, wool spun by Lions brand. And once again, all the information that we discussed is on this label. It just might be located in a different place. So let's take a look at it. All right. So we see that the net weight on this yarn is 3 ounces. We see that it's 108 yards or 99 meters. We see that it's a blend of 80% acrylic, 20% wool fiber. And then once again, we have our washing instructions. I don't see it written out here like we saw in the other ones. It actually was written out, machine washable and dryable. I don't see that on this one. So we do have to know our symbols, right? So here we can wash it, we can't bleach it, we can dry it, we can't iron it, and we can have it professionally cleaned. And then looking here, it's gonna recommend what they feel is the best needle size. It says US 13, and it's gonna recommend the hook size, and then it's gonna tell us what our yarn weight is. They're saying this is a number 5 bulky. I have used this brand of yarn a lot over the years. I do feel that it's definitely on the smaller side of a 5. Or should I say probably a thinner 5, and that's just my personal opinion. You know, the more you knit and the more yarns that you experience running through your fingers, you kind of get a feel for them. And you know, this to me feels almost more like a 4.5, if there were such a thing. But nevertheless, that's what that number means, number 5, bulky. All right, let's keep turning our label. And here's that number that we really need to know. Our lot number is 76040. So if I wanted multiple skeins of this for a pattern, I want to make sure that they all had that same number stamped on them so that I know that they were all dyed in the same lot. Well, I think that's pretty much all for this label. Well guys, I really hope that this video was helpful and that you feel more confident now when you walk into the yarn store and see all what's written on the labels and what all the symbols mean. Well, that's it for this one. Happy knitting, and I hope you have a great day. Bye!